Hi, this is Raquel with the Colorado Academy of Family Physicians. Thank you all for joining us for this webinar. Our presenter today is Beau Bobbitt, an experienced healthcare attorney and physician advocate. He's working on behalf of family physicians all over the country, and in particular in Colorado, as an accountable care organization strategist and counselor. This webinar is part of a series of webinars and seminars on the ACOs. You may submit questions at any time. Please use the chat feature at the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Type in your question and press send. Mr. Bobbitt will also be presenting at the CAFP's annual scientific conference in April. Thank you to COPIC for your generous contribution making this ACO educational series possible. Mr. Bobbitt, you may begin.
Thank you, Raquel, and thanks to the CAFP for putting on this ACO educational series. It's really good timing for this particular webinar, in that between the webinar of a few weeks ago and today, the final ACO regs came out. They'll have major implications for family physicians. Here are today's goals. You can see, those of you who are regulars on the series, you can see that we're getting more advanced. We're building on these other webinars, which are available on the CAFP website. If this is your introduction or your first time, don't fear. This white paper that was co-produced by the CAFP creates a really straightforward roadmap. Written, as Raquel said, I'm a physician advocate and understand, I think, the way you need to have things presented to cut out the legalese and the technical jargon, to try to present something in an understandable fashion. For you regulars, remember that everything overviewed here is covered in context and detail in your blueprint. Although the new rule I mentioned isn't covered, but I'll brag a little, this white paper actually anticipated the final Medicare ACO rules almost exactly. Doug Henley of the AFP emailed today saying that they've left their, as part of their overview of the new regs, they've actually included this white paper in those resource materials because they actually anticipated where those regs came out. Some good to be good, but good to be lucky too, I guess. A very quick review. I want to get on to some of your specific questions and some really more real-world strategies and move beyond the theory. But in the white paper, in the webinars, we went from sort of primer of the overview of their 8 essential elements to every successful ACO. It does not matter who sponsors it. It does not matter if you are independent or employed by a health system or some other entity. Culture is by far the hardest element. That's one. Primary care is essential. You twin those together and you see why primary care, family physician leadership in the ACO movement is so important. You must have aligned incentives, think savings pool, administrative capabilities, of course, health information, technology, patient engagement, scale eventually, and physician-driven best practices across the continuum of care. Staying at the medical home level or primary care level is fine, but you'll eventually want to move out further down the continuum of care. Okay, just a review. In all of these materials, we understand that those 8 elements of that wheel really is where you need to end up, but how do you get there? And so what we have built in and will not review in depth today is that blueprint also has a step-by-step, what do I do Monday morning type guide. These are actual CAFP member questions. How should you get started? Well, since you asked, I would basically a 3-step plan. How to put this theory and this potential into gear. One, I would form an ACO work group within the CAFP. I don't know whether that's already happened. I know informally, just from your interest in being so progressive on this, there's a core of direction and interest, maybe at your board level. But I would form an ACO work group. It's such an enormous opportunity because you have common issues, sort of the classic reason you have a professional society, and then you have local knowledge. You marry these changes in healthcare to the pitfalls and opportunities in your state. Second thing I would do is read the blueprint twice. I say that because the first time it's a little bit alien and foreign because it's so different, so much out of your comfort zone. But everyone who has read the blueprint closely or twice have a much better familiarity with it, and it becomes familiar territory. And for example, people say, "Bo, why didn't you tell me about this? We need to get going." But there's that barrier of just the uncertainty and discomfort that you need to work through. But even that's 4 hours maybe total. 3, I would become a champion. Think about building out the Colorado Medical Home Project into a medical home-centric ACO. That would mean you'd probably you'd need to be a little bit more of a, and I'm several months out of date in where you are on this, but be a medical home neighborhood, if you will, network, where it'd be a little more HIT, best practices, and care management across the population. I would add, as soon as I could, shared savings to the PMPM and fee-for-service. I would also, as a champion, interface with local physicians in different specialties. Things will be brewing within your hospital or your medical community. Maybe it'd be a multi-specialty physician organization that becomes the accountable care organization. You'll see why that's so much more viable than it was after these Medicare regulations. And then the third thing I would do, if you're hospital employed, I would get very involved in your hospital's roles here. Whether it's I'd try to have a seat at that table on everything involving health information technology, any discussion on bundled payment, ACO, work groups, best practices, any of those. I would try to have take advantage of your knowledge, become a resource, and become more valuable, and frankly, compensated more valuably within the system, and help them achieve those 8 elements. Okay. If you've I'm sorry, I missed some of these questions. I only hit the first question. Here we go. Okay, what are the payment scenarios? You've read my bow notes in the ACO blueprint or heard me. If you have, you know that I went out on a limb early saying startup ACOs should never take downside financial risk at first. The proposed regulations required risk-taking, which I thought maybe killed the ACO movement for physician-led ACOs or non-health center, non-metropolitan ACOs. The new regulations do not require this for at least the first 3-year period, and I think they'll probably continue that in perpetuity. Instead, you get a whopping 50% of the savings pool and no downside risk of loss. It's really an incredible opportunity for primary care when you think about the fact that primary care it stands to get the lion's proportion of that savings pool. And the pool can be 10% of the total dollar spend, and that includes hospital dollars. So that the pie, in other words, can be very significant. some mature ACOs can opt for risk, that's called a track 2, the other one's track 1, and get 60% of the savings and up to 15% of the spend, but there's some percentage of the losses that they would need to absorb. Unless there's an ACO, a primary care-led ACO in Colorado I'm aware of, I would never opt for track 2 until you got 4 or 5 years of experience. And then this is an actual physician question. How can hospitals participate? Well, the way this question was phrased, they never can, obviously. But in my experience, is that some hospitals are seeing clinging to the high-cost, high-volume mentality is futile, like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic. They see the future as value-based payment and are looking for the best horse to ride, if you will. And a well-formed, organized medical network is by far the best horse to ride for a hospital. So they and specialists actually court primary care in an evolved scenario. Is that the common situation now? No. But will it be? I think it will. That's certainly the trend in my experience. Okay, now to this one. This may be the world premiere of the first family physician analysis of the final Medicare ACO rule. I think it was just published today in the Federal Register, so it has just come out. Bottom line, folks, if you step up, it can be a game changer for family medicine. If you're tentative or default this chance, the window will close. So the cynics will make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your president, AFP president, Dr. Stream, said that the final rule, quote, represents a substantial step toward mending America's broken healthcare system. And while the rule is 696 pages of technical jargon, it is clear that HHS has made ACOs more attractive, practical, and financially rewarding. Some commentators have also already noted that the rule is particularly primary care friendly. Some examples. The advanced payment program, literally the federal government will pay you for infrastructure costs up front. It is focused on physicians and rural ACOs. I would think any medical society, any multi-specialty group, any primary care group would seize this opportunity. That is the other biggest barrier to entry as a physician advocate that I've seen. Primary care is the only provider mandated to be in the Medicare ACOs, and family physicians are mentioned by name. As noted, you can get a fat 50% of the total savings without any downside risk. There are fewer reporting requirements, and the ones that remain are outpatient-oriented. When this happened in Massachusetts, the primary care providers under, I think, the Blue Cross program there got the same proportion of the savings pool distribution as in proportion to the quality metric weighting. So we'll see how that plays out, but that bodes well for primary care as well, that produce value. Other things like no mandatory EHR, more flexible legal compliance, and the list goes on. The ACO can be 100% family physician owned, it can be 100% primary care owned, but it should involve specialists, should involve hospitals who get it. But the ACO regulations say that that even though it may be 100% primary care, it must have processes that include transitioning to specialists in the hospitals. So ownership can be primary care only. Processes must include specialists in the hospitals. So from a family physician perspective, you should expect to be recruited. You should do well financially without any capital investment or personal financial risk exposure. You should be in a leadership position. So that's why it's our opinion, after reading these closely, that this can be a real game changer if you step up. So in this new accountable care era, how should you team with specialists? We've been in silos for so long that even with the obvious benefits to proactive physicians, this will just simply be hard. There's no background of experience available to call upon. That's why don't be shy if you feel like this is, you've never done this before. Well, nobody's done this before, but we must do it. We've been in a win-lose all your careers. $1 a specialist gets is $1 you lose, and vice versa. We're in a win-win scenario now. If they observe best practices, their contribution to the savings pool grows, but the total pie is bigger. It's now moved to a team game, and you need to start thinking about getting the best team together. The medical home physician is the point guard, if you will. You've got to be prepared. That gives you understanding and confidence. Specialists need to have understanding and confidence too, for them to get beyond the win-lose suspicion and move to the team culture. Frankly, and this has actually worked when it's happened in my limited experience, is that sharing that part one of your blueprint with specialists and hospitals is a good start. It just shows it's a win-win for everybody to play up and contribute maximally to the success of the group. For example, we did a blueprint using part one with anesthesiologists, and they're now working with medical homes to link specialists to them. Raquel, I think we could get an anesthesiologist to your medical meeting in April because they get it, and because of that process. And so, again, it's like with the hospital question, certain specialists are going to deal with the negotiating skill sets that they've developed along the way, but those that have moved beyond that into the new culture are actually courting primary care because that's got to be the basis of any successful, the medical home network has got to be the basis of any successful ACO, in my opinion. It's always better to have a project, a concrete example of this win-win for everyone to actually see and feel and touch. If you have an idea in mind, talk to the ones who would be involved. Here's a real example, the Complex Obese Patient Project. North Carolina's community care medical home neighborhood does a good job with obesity and diabetes, that is, until the patient goes to the hospital. Well, they go a lot, as you know, and you probably know that from your experience that it's difficult, the transition's not there, the interaction's not there, the discharge planning and follow-up isn't there. Well, once they get in the system, the frequent surgery cancellations, complexities create issues intraoperatively. Sometimes the surgeon does the medical home follow-up for 3 years. There's no transition back to the medical home, none. The anesthesiologists, nephrologists, psychiatrists, and surgeons are on board with this project because they see shared savings frankly, with the primary care getting the lion's share, but all of them see that as essential for this team culture to develop. They look at what they can do to these people's lives. They look at the savings to the system that have gotten them very excited and very energized in a new way of thinking, and the extra money on top of fee-for-service is gravy, frankly. But that, having a real deal, if you will, has been specialists are approaching the medical home family physician or internist to do similar projects in this region because it's sort of become the buzz and the thing to do. And I just want to thank you and really empathize. It's an exciting time, and that predominates my mood because this is what I do for a living, but it's very, very uncertain for you. And there's really a new world emerging after the final ACO rule has re-energized accountable care and created an ideal primary care pathway. Frankly, the way I see it with my career in medicine is it's overdue recognition of primary care's contribution to medicine. I think we have time for some questions. We have one which is sort of the ultimate one. How do I form an ACO group? Well, I think I might have touched on this. I think this came in the middle of the program, but I'd go sort of two approaches. One is, if you will, assume, if you will, with me that primary care will have a lot of choices and a lot of influence, and I would go horizontally, if you will, and talk to other primary care physicians and try to beef up and gel that medical home project you have in Colorado, and see if that can't, because there's going to be a certain amount of infrastructure there that perhaps you can build on, and maybe the PMPM that comes through that could actually fund the rest of the infrastructure. I would then it'd be better and maybe harder to have that initial primary care coverage, and then reach out to the specialists. The other would be to go in your community and think about that, like that obese patient project, but forming a go ahead and start with the physician side. You've got that primary care piece. Think about the better specialist who might get it. Have them get up to speed. Have a guy like me maybe come out there, or have them attend one of these meetings where people can get on the same page. I would definitely get on board with that advanced payment program for Medicare. They're literally front-loading, and 50% of savings, if you think about 10% of the spend for Medicare in your county. Well, that's, it's multiple millions of dollars, and the primary and ACO gets half of that. And so you're talking about maybe $5 million, $2 million. That's a lot of money, and Medicare is willing to front-load that up front to have you to pay for your ACO. Your meaningful use incentive monies can go toward building your ACO infrastructure as well. And I would have, how to do it. What would you do? I would get up to speed. I might have a few breakfasts. We talked about this in an early webinar. I'd be very low key about it, but get outside of your silo and talk to some of the specialists in your community. So you could do it locally like that at a multi-specialty level, or depending on the momentum you have, maybe do it broader, because cover the state and start with Medicaid and maybe self-funded employers, government employees. I don't know how progressive Blue Cross and the privates are, but have an initiative, get your act together first, and then I think the easiest part of this is get the payers to line up, because they actually have seen this clearer than the medical community. They're so entrenched in the fee-for-service mentality. Raquel, have you gotten any other questions? I don't think we have any more today.
No, we don't have any more. If anybody in the group wants to submit a question, you can write that right now, but we don't have any others.
And I understand that these are recorded and actually sent to members. And if there are any other questions that come to your mind, our firm is on retainer on an ongoing basis to help the Academy. So feel free to forward those email those to the CAFP directly, and we'll be happy to respond quickly to them. And Raquel and Eleanor, I think this probably will be a ripple effect as well, and happy to do that as people might listen to these in their offices a week from now or 2 weeks from now. I'll be happy to do this on, anytime these questions come up.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, we do have Mr. Bobbitt coming to our annual scientific conference in April, and you'll be receiving registration information for that soon, and you can also check our website. So we're going to be ending off now. Thank you all.